Hello everyone, thank you for coming today to view this video. I do have notes prepared because it is going to be a lengthy video. You might want to pause it here and get a coffee or a tea or an ice water or something to keep you entertained while you're watching this video, because I do have a lot to talk about. It's going to be pretty packed with information for you. Today's video is about the unforeseen side effects to losing partial eyesight. I lost eyesight in my right eye back in August of 2024, so it's been about a year since I lost my eyesight. The first thing I noticed beginning in January of around 2024 was I started having trouble seeing. My eyes were blurry. I had trouble driving at night. I felt tired. When I say I felt tired, it was mostly my eyes felt tired, not necessarily me. Like, I could still function. I could still go to my day job. I could still go to the gym at night. I could still do everything I needed to do, but my eyes were tired. When I did go to the gym, I noticed that on my iPod, I wasn't able to read the music titles anymore, which was a sudden shift from where before I could just see them. All of a sudden, I stopped being able to read the titles. So it was concerning, but at the same time, I didn't take any extreme measures. I didn't, go running to the doctor thinking, oh, I have something terrible wrong with my eyes. In all honesty, I just thought it was part of the aging process. I'm getting older. I probably need new glasses. I did wear glasses already, so I thought, I just need new glasses. That's all this is. But I was so busy at work. I was working probably 60 to 80 hours a week. I didn't have time to stop. I didn't have time to go to the doctor. I wasn't taking care of myself. That was my fault. I take full responsibility for that. I did not take care of me. However, in August of 2024, I was working with a client, and his mother was with him, and he was my age. And I walked up to greet him after I stepped off of my little office area. I walked up to greet him and his mom, and I stepped on him. I flat out stepped on him. And I was so embarrassed. I didn't even see him. It's very strange saying that, because at the time, I clearly saw that my client was right there. But after getting up and moving in his direction, I didn't see him right before me, and I totally stepped on him. I felt ashamed, I felt embarrassed, and I apologized profusely. I am so sorry, sir. I don't know what just happened there. I knew you were there, but I didn't see you at the same time. His mother became very concerned. She put her hand on my shoulder and she said, oh dear. She says, he has diabetes. You really need to get your eyes checked, because he's lost total vision in one of his eyes. I can relate to that because in the past, I have been pre-diabetic. So I thought, oh no, even though all of this exercising and all of this eating healthy is not working, maybe I did develop diabetes, although I do get a physical every year. My doctor never mentioned that my sugar was high or anything. But I thought, well, I am getting older. I'm under a lot of stress here. Maybe it's time to get that workup as well. The mother gave me the name of a local eye doctor that her and her son go to. So I was able to call them and get an appointment pretty quickly. When I got there, I noticed that the office staff, and I mean this in a totally non-offensive way, I don't want to trash talk anybody about this. However, I did notice that the office staff, they weren't interested in my situation. They were just going about the appointment as a preliminary eye check that anyone else would go through, while ignoring the fact that I was experiencing vision loss in my eye. I guess I was expecting when I went there that they would be looking at that, but they didn't. They just did a regular eye exam. I had been having regular eye exams for years, so I expected something different. I expected a specialty visit, I guess, and that just didn't happen. They just proceeded normally with a regular eye exam. At first, I don't know the technical names of all the workers. I know there's a lady sitting at the desk, and she directed me to go to the back where I sat in a chair for a while. This other lady, I guess she's called a technician, I'm not really sure. She took me to a machine and did one thing, and then she sat me in the actual eye doctor's room, excuse me, where I was able to sit down, and the doctor came in and actually performed the eye exam. When I explained to the doctor what I was experiencing and the reason I made the appointment, she did a few things. I think they call it dilation. She dilated my eyes. As you can tell, I don't work in an eye doctor's office, so I'm sorry, I don't understand all the technical terms. She put that liquid in my eyes. It kind of burned a little bit, and then I went to another room. And then there, she looked at my eyes with a very high-powered light. It was horrifying because I was already experiencing vision loss. I don't handle bright lights well. Sometimes I have to wear sunglasses even inside. So that light actually hurt, for that bright, agonizing light to be in my eye like that. It was actually painful for me. After she looked me over, in all honesty, I can't remember if it was that day or if I was called a few days later. I don't remember the timeline there, but I do remember she mentioned that my optic nerve was swollen, and I didn't know what that meant. I said, "What does that mean?" And again, I don't remember if she said it then or if I left and she called me. I don't recall. But she did tell me about this optic nerve issue. MS, which is multiple sclerosis, is one reason why an optic nerve can be swollen. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not in the medical field. But I do have family members with MS. So right off the bat, that was a genuine concern that this could be MS, which is life-altering. So I was like, oh, I know what MS is. I'm familiar with MS. She's like, well, I'm not saying it's MS. She said, I think it's your heart. I said, my heart? I don't understand. What? A swollen optic nerve? What does that have to do with my heart? My heart's been fine. I don't remember having any issues. She said, well, sometimes when you have blocked carotid arteries, your optic nerve can appear swollen. She's like, we're going to send you back to your general practitioner to get an ultrasound of your carotid. So at this point, I wouldn't say I was in panic mode, but there are heart problems in my family. My great-grandfather died very young of a massive heart attack. A lot of my relatives have had multiple heart issues. It comes down to a gene we have. So right away I thought, oh, that must be it. That must be it. It's a familial gene. I better tell my general practitioner about this because I'm going to need some testing. So I make an appointment with my doctor's office, and the lady at the front desk asked me the reason for the visit because it wasn't my normal physical, which I did every year. So I said, well, I was having some trouble with my vision, went to the eye doctor. The eye doctor did a bunch of testing, and it come to find out it's an optic nerve issue. She suggested that I get an ultrasound of my carotid because it could be a heart issue. I don't know. I'm just saying what she said. At the time, I didn't realize that the eye doctor hadn't sent the report to my general doctor. She said she was going to do that immediately. I really didn't give it a second thought. I just thought it was done. So they got me in right away. I only waited maybe a day, maybe half a day. It was pretty quick. And while I was in the waiting room, It took a while to get in, and I figured, well, they got me in so quick, I'm not going to complain about that. And then the lady came to get me, and she brought me into the room where the doctor would see me. When the doctor came in the room, I was actually appalled by the way she treated me. She was angry. I mean, very, very angry. After seeing her busy schedule with all the people in the office waiting that day, I believe probably she was angry because I caused her more work, maybe more paperwork. Doctors are very busy here. There's not enough doctors. So I can see it from her perspective, but I certainly didn't deserve that wrath. She basically said that she did not believe my eye doctor. And who was my eye doctor to tell her what to order on my behalf? And if she thought, the eye doctor she meant, if she thought that I should be having an ultrasound of my carotid, then she should have ordered it. And I said, well, wait a minute. To be honest, Doc, I would trust you more than her. That was my first time ever going to that eye doctor. I don't want her involved with my heart. I think that you should be the one to order that kind of testing. So she said, okay, we're going to do an EKG right here in the office. And I thought, oh, good. It was kind of a relief, like just a quick check. So they hooked me up to all those sticky things. They do the EKG. The nurse, they stepped out, but the nurse came back in. She read the EKG and she bolted out of the room. I didn't know what that meant. The people here in this office, they don't move very fast. So when that happened, I was kind of like, what's going on? The doctor came back in and she basically said, I need you to get up and get out. I need the room. And I said, oh, well, I just had an EKG. What happened? She says, nothing, you're fine. Oh, well, what about the ultrasound for my carotid? Yeah, I told my front desk to order it. Just go up there and check out. And she was very cold. And I was like, oh, okay. So I got up, got my belongings, went out to the front desk. And they proceeded to say, we're going to have the hospital call you with a time to schedule the ultrasound. And when, around here anyway, when you do that, you have a choice of 2 places to go. I chose the one closer to my house. They're usually quicker to get into, and it's closer because at this time I wasn't able to drive a car because I really had no vision in my eye. So first I went to the ultrasound. They were very nice. They did the ultrasound in a very professional manner. I can't complain about that at all. And then I heard back from my general doctor. I had to go in the office to get the results. She said that my carotid arteries were not blocked at all. They were fine. So that was not the cause of an enlarged or swollen optic nerve. Now, the other point here is at this time, I find out from the doctor that she never got the eye doctor's report. So she said, in order for me to schedule any further testing, I'm going to need that report from the doctor. And she made it sound like no cardiologist will even consider seeing me unless they have a reason to. Like, I have no right to just go to a cardiologist. I have no right to just pick up the phone and say, hey, I think that I have a heart problem. Can I come see you? This doctor made it sound like you cannot do that. That's not a thing. You will be turned away. And you have to have that eye doctor's report in order to get into a cardiologist's office. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just going by what my doctor told me. So I called the eye doctor's office, and this happened to be like weeks later because I've already seen my general practitioner. I've already had the ultrasound. So this is weeks later. So she said, I'll send it to her today and I'll copy you. And around here, everything is online, so you go up and you see your medical chart and all that. So I was able to open up that medical report, which said, in fact, I have swollen optic nerve. I think her term was enlarged. I think that's what she said. And I saw that it was sent to my general practitioner. In addition, the EKG was uploaded to my report as well. And I saw that the EKG said at the top that at some point I had a heart attack. Now, the only thing I could think of was back in 2020, I had severe COVID with the pneumonia when it first was a thing. And I always thought I had a seizure. I turned purple, I passed out, and I had tremors in my hand. I just thought it was a seizure from the COVID, from the pneumonia, from the high fever. I had an extremely high fever. So I thought, wow, I had a heart attack during COVID. I had no idea. But my doctor wasn't interested in addressing the heart attack with me. In fact, she never called me at all after she got the eye doctor report. So I had to call her. I had to call her office. And I talked to the front desk ladies again. And I said, the eye doctor has now sent a report. I said I had the ultrasound of the carotid. It was fine. But I do see that on the EKG, I had a heart attack. Why isn't nobody's addressing this, basically. So they set up an appointment for me to go back to the general practitioner. Now, I want to just point out here that every time I have a doctor's appointment, I can't just do a phone call to the doctor. I have to go in, And when I go in, they charge about $250 for each visit. So I'm racking up tremendous medical bills at this point from all the eye testing. And so my general doctor said, look, I think you may have glaucoma. I said, well, I can't believe I have glaucoma. I've had that poof test before every year for when Sears was in business, my eye doctor was at Sears. They're no longer in business. I haven't seen him in years. But I have had the glaucoma test year after year. I've never had glaucoma. So I find it highly unlikely that I've developed glaucoma. That didn't make any sense to me. And who am I to question a doctor, right? Who am I? I'm nobody. I'm not a medical person. I don't have a degree in medical anything. But I didn't want to be disrespectful, but I wanted to advocate for myself at the same time. So she said, well, first of all, I want you to go back to that eye doctor and schedule a glaucoma test. Once you have that done, if it's negative, then, and only then, I will send you to a cardiologist for the rest of the testing. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, the paperwork shows I had a heart attack. You're not going to address that? She's like, you're fine. Like, whoa. Okay. So I called up the eye doctor. I got back in there. I did the glaucoma test. They put me in front of this really old, ancient machine. And it reminded me of an old Atari game where you sit there and you try to, look at all the dots and everything on the DOS style computer system. That's what it reminded me of. And they would push a button, and every time they pushed a button, a little light would blink. I couldn't see half of the lights with my right eye. With the left eye, I could see everything. My right eye, I couldn't see. But at the end of the day, when she came back with the results, she said, I do not have glaucoma. It was actually not that day when I got the test results, because she wanted to run this by other members of her office just to make sure she wasn't missing anything. And these were eye doctors that had been in business 30 plus years. So they all looked at all the reports and they came back and said, she does not have glaucoma. This is something else. We don't know what it is. So I got a letter in the mail eventually. I did get a phone call too, but I got a letter. Said there's nothing further we can do for you. As far as we're concerned, you just need an updated eyeglass prescription. You don't need anything else from us. There's nothing else we can do. That's a very defeating feeling when you know there's something wrong, you can't see, your life has been turned upside down. I wasn't driving anymore at all. I had total vision loss in my right eye, and yet I felt like no one was listening or no one was helping. I still had to go to my day job, still had to work 68 to 80 hours a week. I still had to meet with clients. And it was very, very defeating feeling. So I got back in with my general practitioner, who had told me before she would definitely send me to a cardiologist. But this time, when I went in, she said, I'm not sending you to a cardiologist. That's not necessary. We're going to do the testing from here. We're going to send you off for different tests. And I said, okay. So the first thing I did was she sent me for an echocardiogram. It's painless. You lay down. They take almost like an ultrasound wand, and they run it over your heart area, looking for any defects, damage, stuff like that. It's very, very thorough. So I knew from a Google search that if this came back normal, I was most likely okay. Like my heart was most likely okay. So that kind of gave me a peace of mind, knowing the result of this test could end up changing the course of my life for the worst, or it would bring good news. So I wasn't really worried. I was actually looking forward to this test because it could conclude things for me that I was questioning, like, what about the heart attack? So I went to this echocardiogram. The doctor produced his report very quickly. I have to say, it was in days. I got that and I looked it over. It did mention a tri-leaflet valve issue. But in that report, the doctor said he didn't feel that it was of any consequence. So I didn't know what that meant. I'm not a doctor again. I really don't know what that meant too much. Nothing was explained to me. That doctor didn't explain anything to me. And then when I went to my general practitioner for the result, she didn't really explain it to me. She said, you're fine. And that seemed to be her answer for everything. So then she said she wanted me to go for a stress test. And I said, oh, I've been to one before. I know exactly what that is. Yeah, let me do that. So she sent me to a stress test. I've been going to the gym for 12 years. So I would say I'm pretty active. I went to the stress test, and the ladies there were like, we don't usually see people in good physical shape here for the stress test. She said most of the people that come here really have really bad problems. They can't even finish this test. They said you should have no problem. So I get on the treadmill. I do the test. I pass it with flying colors, as I figured I would because I'm always working out at the gym. So that wasn't a big deal. And they sent the report to the doctor, which said I had the heart of a 20-year-old. And I'm no 20-year-old, trust me. So I was like, oh, well, the 12 years at the gym paid off. That's wonderful. So at the end of the day, the tests proved I don't have heart damage from the heart attack. And my doctor said the vision is not heart related. But just as a final measure of precaution, she sent me to a different section of the hospital to get a heart monitor that I had to wear for 48 hours. Now, some people get these and wear them for a month. I wish I had worn mine a little longer because some things did come up in there that are questionable. But she only ordered a 48-hour one. And it showed a few minor things, nothing to suggest I was going to have another heart attack or die suddenly or anything like that. So she felt from these tests conclusively that I was not a candidate for a cardiologist. That was kind of disappointing because I still feel like yeah, but I did have a heart attack. Now, again, I'm no doctor. I don't know how doctors determine who's worthy of a cardiologist and who's not. I still felt like, why can't I see a cardiologist? But I didn't fight it. I was literally worn out, tired. I was still blind in my eye. Despite having all these tests, it didn't make my blindness go away. It didn't make my blindness any better. So I chose to get a second eye opinion at that point. I wasn't trying to be a pain. I was trying to look out for my own self because I really wasn't 100% satisfied with any of this. So I traveled out of state to an office suggested by a coworker, and I met with a nice doctor, and it turned out he had actually gone to college with the first eye doctor who said I had a swollen optic nerve. When he saw the report she did compared to his report that he did, he brought me back in to discuss the results. I believe at that point it was the same day. Like, I believe I went back in the waiting room, and I could be wrong about that. But in any event, I went back either that same day or a different day, and we discussed the results. He said something completely shocking that concerned me even more. He said, "You don't have and never had a swollen or enlarged optic nerve." So now I was like, what? What is going on here? I'm sorry, I'm tired, I'm confused. I'm still blind. What is going on? And he said, I don't know how the eye doctor there made this mistake. He said he actually knew her personally and went to college with her. And she's a very thorough, careful, caring person. And he couldn't understand her report because it didn't show a swollen optic nerve. She wrote it there. He saw that. He saw it right in her findings. But the evidence wasn't there. And I said, oh no. You mean to tell me I've paid thousands of dollars for medical appointments to find out I never had a swollen optic nerve? I said, but what's causing my blindness? I'm still blind. And he said he had no answer. There was no reason for my blindness. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not driving a car. I had to get a driver to bring me here today. He said, go back to your general doctor and do some more testing, because he said, I know if you don't have a swollen optic nerve, you most likely don't have MS, but it might be good to get tested for that as well. I made another appointment with my GP, and at this point I was so drained. I was so drained trying to go to work every day, take care of a family, having to go to all these doctor's appointments, get rides to go to these doctor's appointments because I wasn't driving. So I went to her and said, hey, I saw a second eye doctor. Here are the results. I never had a swollen optic nerve. I don't even know where to go with this. I just know that none of my symptoms have improved. They've gotten worse. So I need a better quality of life. I can't keep going on not being able to see out of my eye, especially when there's no reason for this to happen and nobody's giving me a solution. I just don't know what to do. She said the only thing that's left is to see a neuro-ophthalmologist. And she said, we'll call you with a referral. It's going to take us time to get one, so we'll call you with that. So when I got home that day, I researched neuro-ophthalmologists. There are only a couple in the state. They're each an hour away in a different direction, which isn't that bad considering some people have to travel hours and hours for medical care. So when I saw that they were an hour away, it's not that bad, except that I can't drive. So I'm like, I have to keep getting rides and so forth. They're both in dangerous cities in my state. So the fear of having to Uber there was really stressing me out, because now I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm going to have to Uber there to this dangerous city where crime happens on the news every single day. And then I'm going to have to wait for an Uber to pick me up. It just, the stress of it just settled in, and I was starting to panic a little. When I called eventually to get appointments after my doctor had set it up with them, with my, I guess she sent my records and then told me to reach out to them to call. Each of them were between a 6-month and year-long wait. There was no getting in any sooner. And I was like, oh my goodness. After all this money I've just blown through for all this medical care, now I have to go an hour away to a dangerous city, and I have to wait to do this for 6 months or a year at least, while I'm blind, while I'm not driving, while it's getting worse, while the blurriness in my left eye is worsening because I'm trying to use my left eye more to compensate for the lack of vision in my right eye. So I started having trouble with my hands. I started having trouble walking. Aside from stepping on that client, now as I'm walking from my desk around the place I worked, I was actually kind of lopsided, kind of walking sideways a little bit. It was noticeable by people. I felt dizzy. I just felt off. So I called up my general doctor and I said, look, I'm not willing to wait 6 months to a year to get in with a neuro-ophthalmologist. Can I just see a neurologist? She's like, well, a neuro-ophthalmologist will do a deep inspection of your eye. I said, you know what? I'm past that now. I've had all these eye doctors look at my eye. I'm sure if there was anything in there, they would have seen it first or suggested it. I said, at this point, I'm having neurological symptoms. I feel like I should see a neurologist, like a general neurologist. And I had seen one in the past. So she said, okay, that might be the best bet. That might be easier to deal with for you. And they're local. And I said, yeah. And thankfully, I was able to get a ride easier because it's here locally. So within 2 weeks, I was meeting with a neurologist. Now, again, I don't mean to be offensive when discussing this, but this is really my reality. And I feel like other people have gone through things like this. So all of the doctors around here seem to run in the same circle. And I've always wondered, is that to my detriment in my medical care? Am I actually being treated for my symptoms? Or are they biased based on their opinion of me? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk to a doctor's office when I go there. I'm always very polite. I'm polite to everybody in the office. I've given nobody any reason to feel I'm disingenuous, if that's a word, disingenuous, or, trying to be a jerk to their office. I know that doctors and secretaries of doctors get a bad rap because I see the reviews online. Even at my own doctor's office, she has really bad, I think she has a 2-star. So I know that they also get bad reviews and so forth, but that's not me. I'm not leaving them the 2-star. You see, I'm just trying to find out what is happening with my vision. I have a family to care for. Is this something long-term? Is this something progressive? Does this have anything to do with my heart attack? There were so many unanswered questions. And yet, when I went to this neurologist thinking this could solve everything, I find out that he's like really good friends with my doctor. And it, I didn't really care. Like, okay, that's great. But I felt like, great, there's going to be some bias there. That's just naturally how I felt. He examined me. He took into consideration all of my medical records. And he said, have you ever had a migraine? And I said, yeah, I've actually seen you years ago because you were treating me for migraines at the time. And he said my vision loss was caused by a migraine. I said, what? How did you conclude that? And he said, with your history and everything you've told me, he said, I don't remember the technical term for it, if there was one, but he said it was like a silent migraine in my eye only. Like, I had no head pain. I had no other symptoms that would suggest it was a migraine. And plus, I've had this for over a year by this point, probably a year and a half at this point. So you see, it was like, wait a minute. I haven't had any migraines. I was treated for them years ago. And because of my diet, my lifestyle, my exercising, I've been able to control the majority of my migraines now. I don't really get them much anymore. If I do, it's because weather related or what have you. I don't really get them anymore. So I was totally stunned. He said the only way to overcome this type of migraine, because it was so detrimental to my life, was to decrease stress. Well, that's way easier said than done when you're working 60 to 80 hours a week, when you have a high stress job, when you're taking care of a family. It's way easier said than done. Just decrease stress. I already went to the gym. I already ate right. I know how to stop and smell the roses. Decrease stress. So I made the very hard, life-altering decision. And I went back to college and I became a life coach. And I quit my job 6 months ago. That way, to fall back on an income that I no longer had, I figured I could be a life coach anywhere, anytime, from my computer, even if I did lose total vision in my eye and I couldn't drive anymore. That was the only way I could see out of this situation. My eye got worse before I quit my job while I was under the care of the neurologist. My right eye started to droop. As you can see, the eyes are both equal now in size, but the right eye was drooping. Let me see if I can do it. It was like this. So it was always partially shut all the time. It was very embarrassing. People looked at me and they thought I was being a smart aleck or rude to them. They thought I was giving them dirty looks all the time. And I had to face confrontations from clients often, thinking that I was just being a jerk when I couldn't help it. I couldn't help my face. I couldn't help the way my eye drooped. I couldn't even see out of the eye. So on occasion, somebody would complain about me. And this was right before I quit because of the situation with my eye. I had a woman write to management telling them that I was just sitting there, basically with my eye shut. I was humiliated. I felt awful. And I remember this person, and I remember being extremely kind and graceful to her, even though she was really not a nice person to me. She was short. The way she spoke to me was disrespectful. The way she carried herself, you could tell she was just not a nice person. But when she saw my eye, she decided I was the jerk. And she reported me in a letter. Instead of my boss coming to me and saying, hey, what happened here? He knew me. He knew I would never do that to a customer. He knew I would never be rude to anyone. And I was like, I don't even know who you're talking about. But once I found her address, her email address from that letter, I looked back and was like, oh, that one. Yeah, she was really rude. I said, I'm sorry, I can't help my eye. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't on purpose. It's something I couldn't help. But then it got worse. She took it a step further and wrote corporate offices to make them aware how appalled she was that they would hire somebody that, shut their eye on a customer. When, see like that, when my eye was shut like that, it almost looked like I was trying to wink, but I wasn't. It was involuntary. And I didn't hear from upper management as I had expected to. I heard from marketing, which caught me off guard. And they said, we received this letter from this client and she's in a state of rage. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm not going to explain myself anymore about this. I'm not going to justify my face. And obviously this woman has some deep-rooted issues of her own to even take it to this level, or to think the only reason my eye is like, twitching out is because I'm rude. I said, people have no empathy. People have no compassion. So marketing wrote her and they said, I never intentionally tried to offend her. I never was intentionally rude to her. And if she would like to come back in and meet with me or someone else, we'd be glad to talk with her. And she actually said this, which offended me even more. She said, well, you never know what somebody's going through. And I thought, you're right, you don't. So why not just keep your mouth shut? How's that? Why write a scathing, rageful letter condescending somebody when you have no idea what's truly going on? And as a lesson to all, if you are ever in a situation where you think somebody is being blatantly that rude to you and twitching their eye out at you, just say, hey, I don't appreciate what you're doing. And then let them give you a chance, or give them a chance to explain. Like, hey, I'm so sorry, my eye, it's acting deranged. I can't help it. I'm so sorry. It's not personal. It's not intentional. Give them a chance. Don't just lash out at a human being because you're in a bad mood, or because just get over yourself. You know what I'm saying? So God only knows what her life is like to be that hateful towards a human being. But in the end, I made the ultimate decision that wasn't going to help me with my eye. It wasn't going to help that I was faced with people like that pretty much on a daily basis. It got worse and worse, because I don't know if it's been your experience. It's been my experience that working in the public with people, people are getting less patient, people are getting less kind. That's just been my true experience. And at that point, I knew for my own health and safety, I would have to leave. I couldn't do that kind of work anymore. So 2 weeks ago, I was standing in my kitchen and something moved to the side of me. It was like on the floor or something. I jumped out of my skin. I was so startled. I held onto my heart. I sighed out loud, like gasped is probably a better word. And then it dawned on me. My peripheral vision has returned. I can see out of my eye. I have been driving again for a little bit. I prefer not to. So I do it when I need to. If I don't need to, I walk. If I need something at the grocery store, I'll walk. If I need to mail something at the post office, I'll walk. I'm fortunate enough to live in an area where I can walk to almost anything I need. There's restaurants nearby, not many, but a couple. There's a Dunkin' Donuts nearby, but I usually prefer to make that at home. So anytime I need to drive, I've noticed that my vision has improved and I'm able to see what I'm doing, thankfully. But now I realize I'm hypersensitive to any movement on my right side. And I actually look at that like a success. I feel sometimes like I need blinders, like a horse, because it's very startling to have that reaction to any movement. Like if I'm in the grocery store and somebody comes up, I'm like, oh, and I don't mean to be like that. So I try to tend to lean towards the right side of the aisle and stay on the right side so that nobody comes around me, because I feel bad if I'm like, oh, Also, in addition, I no longer need bifocals. I had 3 or 4 pair of, like the bifocal glasses, because everywhere I went, every eye doctor prescribed new bifocals. So that was another expense I racked up. I have like several pair of those. And eventually I realized I don't need those. I got these for $1. I got these at a junk store for $1. And I absolutely love them. I can see fine. I can see on my computer. I can see to read. They're perfect. So that was another success. Light does bother me in this room where we are today. It's a little closet in my bed, off of my bedroom. So there's only one light above and it's okay. But if I'm outside for any length of time, even just to step out for a minute, I have my sunglasses. I can't go outside. I can't tolerate light. That's the only side effect from any of this that I'm still recovering from. That may never go away, I don't know. But to drive again, my eye is no longer drooping. All because of stress. It was never my actual eye. All because of the stress that I was going through. I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced vision loss? And in what ways has it affected your life? Did you recover your vision loss? What did you go through? What are your experiences? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Till next time.